Emma moved quietly through the dimly lit corridors of the corporate building, her cleaning cart rolling softly behind her. Night had fallen hours ago, and the office floors were nearly empty, except for a few late workers and the faint hum of computers left on standby. She had grown used to being invisible, a silent presence who kept the glass towers shining and the desks free of clutter. Yet tonight, something felt different. The usual routine was about to break. As Emma finished wiping down the large windows of the executive wing, the door to the CEO's private office opened without a sound. Mr. Grayson, the man whose name was spoken with both respect and fear, stepped out with a measured gaze that settled on her. "Emma," he said, his voice low but firm, "would you clean my office tonight?" The question surprised her. She had never been asked personally before. Usually the orders came through the supervisors, cold and distant. Her heart quickened, not knowing if this was a test or something more. She nodded and followed him inside, pushing the door open to a space filled with polished mahogany and leather-bound books. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with a hint of cedar. Mr. Grayson watched her silently as she began tidying. Then his eyes fell on the small notepad on her cart, covered in messy handwriting. "What are these?" he asked, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Emma froze, unsure whether to hide the notes or share the secret she had kept buried for years. Her dreams. Emma's fingers trembled slightly as she looked up from the notepad. The words she had hurriedly jotted down in stolen moments, ideas for a business, plans that had never seen the light of day, lay open before Mr. Grayson's steady gaze. "They are just thoughts," Emma whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "Ideas I have when I'm not working." Mr. Grayson pulled a chair close and sat down, his expression softening. "Tell me about these ideas, Emma. What do you want to build?" The weight of his question surprised her. It was not a challenge or a dismissal, but genuine interest. For the first time, she felt like someone saw beyond her uniform and the mop she wielded. Hesitant, she shared her vision, a company that could help people, a product designed from empathy, something practical yet new. Her words spilled out, nervous but earnest, filling the quiet room with a raw hope. "You have a clear mind," Mr. Grayson said thoughtfully. "Few here would even dream beyond their title. Why have you never spoken up before?" Emma swallowed, feeling the old wall of doubt crumble. "I was afraid no one would listen or believe me." The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was a bridge, connecting two worlds that rarely met. Mr. Grayson stood and walked toward the window, gazing out at the city lights flickering in the night. "Emma," he said, his voice carrying a new weight, "I am willing to offer you something few get. A chance to prove yourself. Our company's internship program opens doors to the elite. It is not easy. It will test you." He turned, meeting her eyes with a steady confidence. "But I want you to try." Emma blinked, disbelief and hope clashing inside her. This offer was unlike anything she had imagined. To step out of the shadows of cleaning supplies and into a world she only glimpsed through glass walls was daunting. Yet beneath the fear was a fierce determination, the desire to finally be seen for who she was, not the janitor, but a thinker, a creator. "I won't let you down," she said quietly, the words sealing her promise. That night, as Emma left the office building, the weight of the opportunity settled on her shoulders. The path ahead was unknown and crowded with doubt, but also filled with the possibility of change. As the city buzzed around her, she made a silent vow to herself, to fight, to learn, and to transform not just her life, but perhaps the company that had never truly looked her way before. The bright lights of the boardroom felt overwhelming as Emma entered on her first day as an intern. Faces turned to glance at her, some curious, others doubtful. She noticed the subtle looks, the raised eyebrows. She was no longer invisible, but that attention brought a new kind of pressure. The polished suits and confident voices contrasted sharply with the janitor's uniform she had just left behind. A colleague whispered as she passed, "What is she doing here?" "She is just the cleaner." Emma heard but did not react outwardly. Instead, she squared her shoulders and reminded herself of Mr. Grayson's words. This is her chance to show what she could do. Despite the coldness, she found small moments to shine, asking questions, taking notes, and offering fresh ideas during group tasks. Each small victory chipped away at the walls of judgment. Yet the road was far from easy. At lunch, Emma sat alone, listening as others debated strategies she had never learned in school. Doubt crept in. Was she truly ready? Could she match the polished intellect around her? But when the office cat brushed against her leg, purring softly, Emma smiled to herself. Even in the quietest moments, she found strength. This was only the beginning. Days passed, each one testing Emma's resolve in ways she had never imagined. The sleek conference rooms filled with sharp minds and swift decisions often left her feeling out of place. Colleagues exchanged knowing glances when she spoke up, their skepticism sometimes veiling itself as polite indifference. Yet Emma refused to retreat into silence. Every question she asked, every idea she shared was a step toward breaking the invisible walls that had held her back for so long. One afternoon, a major project fell into chaos. Deadlines loomed and frustration mounted as the team struggled to find a solution. Emma, quietly observing, noticed a small detail overlooked by everyone else. A flaw in the data that, if corrected, could save the project. Her voice wavered, but she spoke up. "What if we adjust this number here? It might change the outcome." Eyes turned sharply to her, disbelief mixing with surprise. Mr. Grayson, sitting at the head of the table, nodded thoughtfully. "Explain." Emma's hands trembled, but her explanation was clear and precise. Slowly, the room shifted from doubt to acceptance. The correction worked. The project was back on track. A ripple of respect passed through the team, subtle but undeniable. That evening, as Emma pushed her cart through the quiet halls, she allowed herself a small smile. She was no longer just cleaning floors. She was cleaning the path toward her own future. Emma found herself drawn to Mr. Grayson's office more often, not as a janitor, but as a mentee. Each meeting was a rare gift, a quiet space where her ideas were met with genuine attention and thoughtful advice. "You have something different, Emma," Mr. Grayson said one evening, leaning back in his chair. "The world sees only what they expect. You must show them what they have missed." His words settled deep in her mind, fueling a growing confidence that no harsh whisper or doubtful glance could erase. Yet outside those walls, resistance simmered. Some colleagues refused to accept her presence, casting shadows of doubt that spread like cold fog. "She is lucky to be here, nothing more," a senior intern muttered one day, loud enough for Emma to hear. The sting was sharp, but instead of retreating, Emma confronted the challenge silently, letting her work speak louder than their words. She stayed late, researched harder, and asked more questions, carving her own space in the company's crowded halls. In moments of quiet, Emma would glance at the small, stray dog that often appeared near the building entrance, wary but hopeful. It mirrored her journey perfectly, cautious, overlooked, but persistent in seeking connection and safety. That simple animal became a silent companion, a reminder that perseverance could carve a path even through the harshest streets. Weeks into the internship, the company announced a high-stakes challenge, an innovation contest designed to discover new ideas that could shape the firm's future. Emma knew this was her chance to shine or fade away. The contest was fierce. Teams of seasoned interns and junior executives brainstormed with sharp precision and polished presentations. Emma felt the weight of every doubtful gaze as she joined the ranks, a lone janitor turned contender. The nights grow longer. Emma pored over her notes and sketches in the small apartment she called home, her mind racing with possibilities. The pressure mounted as she struggled to refine her idea, a project that combined practicality with a fresh perspective on customer needs. Doubts gnawed at her. Did she have enough knowledge? Could she truly stand toe-to-toe with those who had years of formal education behind them? Still, each time those thoughts crept in, Emma remembered Mr. Grayson's quiet faith in the silent companionship of the stray dog waiting outside the building. The day of the presentations arrived with electric tension. Emma's turn came last. The room, filled with polished suits and poised faces, grew silent as she stepped forward. Her voice, steady but humble, carried the story of her idea, not just its features, but its heart. She spoke of overlooked customers, of simple solutions that could make a real difference. As she finished, the room held its breath. Then a slow but genuine applause broke out, led by Mr. Grayson himself. For the first time, Emma felt the walls truly falling away, replaced by a new world opening before her. Emma's victory in the innovation contest brought a surge of hope, but it also stirred unseen currents beneath the polished surface of the company. The celebration was quiet, marked mostly by Mr. Grayson's approving nod and a few cautious smiles from colleagues who had watched her journey with mixed feelings. The real challenge was just beginning, transforming recognition into acceptance. Almost immediately, Emma sensed a shift. Some colleagues kept their distance, their eyes sharp with unspoken doubts. In meetings, her suggestions were met with polite nods but little action. Whispers floated in the hallways, questions about her background, her qualifications, her place in a world that had always seemed closed to her. Yet Emma pressed forward, drawing strength from every small win and from the quiet mentor who believed in her. "This is not just your fight," Mr. Grayson reminded her once. "It is a test for us all." One afternoon, while working late, Emma watched the stray dog from afar, its wary eyes reflecting the loneliness she sometimes felt. Yet the dog persisted, returning night after night, never giving up. In that reflection, Emma found a powerful truth. Resilience was not about never facing fear or doubt, but about moving forward despite them. And so she moved, step by step, breaking through the silence that had long kept her invisible. The office buzzed with tension as a critical meeting was called to decide the future of the innovation project. Emma sat at the table, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Faces she had seen with cool dismissal now turned toward her, some skeptical, others curious. This meeting would be the first time she truly stood as an equal, not just an outsider trying to prove her worth. When the senior manager challenged her proposal, questioning the feasibility and market impact, Emma did not flinch. She took a deep breath and responded with calm precision, drawing from hours of research and the support she had quietly gathered. "The data supports this approach," she said firmly. "Our customers want something that fits their everyday lives, not just flashy ideas." The room fell silent, then murmurs of approval began to ripple through the group. After the meeting, Mr. Grayson approached her, his eyes reflecting a mix of pride and relief. "You held your ground," he said simply. "That was the moment when they began to see you for who you are." Emma smiled softly, knowing the road ahead was still long, but for the first time, the journey felt shared. The company's walls were no longer barriers but invitations. Emma's growing confidence began to ripple through the company like a quiet storm. With each meeting, each presentation, she chipped away at old assumptions and opened new doors. Not just for herself, but for others who had been overlooked. Her ideas brought fresh perspectives that challenged the usual way of doing things. Slowly, attitudes shifted from skepticism to cautious respect. One morning, as Emma walked through the bustling office, she noticed a group of younger interns gathered around the coffee machine. They looked up as she approached, their faces lighting with surprise and hope. "We heard what you did in the meeting," one said. "You showed us it is possible." Emma smiled, realizing that her journey had sparked something beyond her own success, a spark that could ignite change in others too. Even those who had once doubted her began to listen. Emma found allies in unexpected places, an assistant who shared her quiet determination, a janitor from another building who cheered her on, and even the office cat who had become a symbol of persistence and grace. Mr. Grayson watched from his office, a quiet pride in his eyes. The company was beginning to look different, shaped by a force no one had seen coming: Emma's quiet strength. Emma's presence in the company was no longer just accepted, it had become a catalyst for change. Meetings once dominated by old ideas began to welcome new voices, and the atmosphere shifted toward collaboration rather than competition. Yet with progress came resistance. Some longtime employees bristled at the disruption of their routines, whispering doubts and stirring quiet unrest. One afternoon, Emma overheard a heated conversation behind closed doors, voices filled with frustration and fear. "She is moving too fast," one said. "What will happen to us if the company changes this much?" The words stung, but Emma understood their fear. Change was never easy. It forced everyone to confront uncertainty and challenge the status quo they had grown comfortable with. Rather than responding with anger, Emma chose patience, knowing that real transformation required more than ideas. It needed empathy. Late that evening, as she sat alone in the quiet office, Emma looked out the window at the city's restless lights. The stray dog appeared once more, its eyes reflecting the same mix of hope and caution Emma felt. She whispered to herself, "Change is not a destination, but a journey." With renewed determination, she prepared to face whatever storms lay ahead, ready to lead not just by ideas but by heart. Emma's rise was no longer a quiet story whispered in the halls. It had become a powerful message echoing throughout the company. Her leadership was defined not by authority or title, but by empathy and authenticity. She made space for voices that had long been ignored and showed that strength could come from unexpected places. One afternoon during a team meeting, Emma listened carefully as a young employee shared an idea, hesitant but full of promise. Instead of dismissing the notion, Emma encouraged it, fostering a culture where innovation was nurtured alongside respect. "Everyone here has a spark," she said softly, "and sometimes all it takes is a chance to light the fire." The room shifted. Hope blossomed in quiet smiles and nods. Even Mr. Grayson noticed the change. The once rigid atmosphere softened, replaced by a culture of openness and possibility. Emma's journey was no longer hers alone. It had become a shared story, inspiring those who dared to dream beyond their given roles. As the city lights shimmered outside, Emma understood that leadership was not about changing others, but about unlocking their own strength. Emma stood by the large window in the CEO's office, gazing out at the city skyline glittering beneath the dusk. The journey from janitor to respected leader had changed her in ways she never imagined. The woman who once hid her dreams in scribbled notes was now known for her clear vision and quiet strength. She carried herself with a calm confidence that inspired others, yet never lost the humility that kept her grounded. Reflecting on her path, Emma remembered the nights she spent alone with her mop, the whispered doubts, and the moments when hope seems fragile. Those memories were no longer burdens, but stepping stones, reminders that every struggle had shaped her resilience. She had learned that true strength was not about perfection, but about persistence and the courage to keep moving forward, even when the world seemed to doubt her. Beyond her personal growth, Emma's story had begun to ripple through the company, changing attitudes and opening doors for others who had been overlooked. She had become a symbol of possibility, proof that talent and determination could break through even the thickest barriers. And as she turned from the window, ready to face the next challenge, Emma knew her journey was far from over. It was only just beginning. The conference room buzzed with energy as Emma stood before a diverse group of employees, executives, interns, and janitorial staff alike. This was no ordinary meeting. It was a gathering to announce a new initiative inspired by Emma's journey, a mentorship program designed to uncover hidden talent from every corner of the company. The room fell silent as Emma spoke, her voice steady but filled with passion. "Every person here has potential waiting to be discovered," she said. "This program will give them the chance to step forward and be seen." Among the crowd, there were faces old and new, some hopeful, others skeptical, but all listening. Emma's words were more than a call to action. They were a promise that the company was changing, evolving beyond old limitations. Her own story had opened doors, but now it was time to build hallways for others to walk through. The initiative was met with cautious optimism, a seed planted that could grow into lasting transformation. After the meeting, Mr. Grayson approached Emma with a rare smile. "You have done more than I imagined," he said. "You have reshaped this company." Emma's reply was simple, her eyes reflecting quiet determination. "We are only getting started." Outside, the city lights shimmered like 1,000 possibilities, each one a reminder that change begins with a single step and a single voice brave enough to speak. Emma stood on the rooftop of the towering office building, the cool evening breeze brushing her face as the city stretched endlessly below. The journey from janitor to leader had been more than a personal triumph. It had become a beacon for everyone who had ever felt invisible. She remembered the nights filled with doubt, the whispered judgments, and the moments when hope seemed distant. Now those memories fueled her drive to open doors for others. Her voice echoed in the company's halls, not as a distant command, but as a quiet force of change. Emma had learned that true leadership was not about titles or power, but about lifting others up and creating space for voices that had long been ignored. She thought of the stray dog waiting patiently by the building's entrance, a small symbol of resilience and hope that had accompanied her along the way. Who else are we overlooking? She asked herself softly. Whose dreams are waiting to be heard? The city lights flickered like stars as Emma looked out, ready to continue her journey, not alone, but alongside those who dared to believe in themselves. Her story was a reminder that brilliance often hides where no one expects, waiting for a chance to shine. And in that light, Emma knew the future was wide open, full of promise and possibility for all who dared to step forward. Emma's journey reminds us that greatness often hides in the quietest corners, waiting for someone to see it. Look around you. Who might be overlooked, underestimated, or waiting for their chance to shine? It could be a colleague, a neighbor, or even yourself. Today, choose to recognize the hidden talents in your world. Give someone the opportunity to rise. Because when we open doors for others, we don't just change their lives. We transform entire communities. Whose brilliance are you ready to discover?